Beer Mile Nation, this is our first remote podcast. Welcome back, first of all. We've got, well, at least I've got, because I'm sitting in the beautiful mountains, I've got some local beer from the Dillon Dam Brewery in Dillon, Colorado. Got a tropical Hefeweizen. I know Adam is a little jealous over there.
We've got big Chris Chad Robertson, Colorado Chad, and poor cuck boy Adam just sitting in his parents' house. So that's pretty cool.
Today on the show, Jake Riley. If you follow the sport of running at all, you would definitely know Jake Riley's name from making the Olympic team in the U.S. for the marathon. He was second place at the trials behind Galen Rupp. And a lot of people going into the Olympic trials probably had no idea who Jake Riley was, didn't expect him to do well. If you look back in 2019 at the Chicago Marathon, he had a breakthrough race, ran 2:10 there. And so that's really his coming out into the marathon scene. So based on that time, he was definitely in the talks of someone who was a contender for that second and third spot. You know, a lot of people ruling Galen Rupp as the person who is probably going to win the Olympic trials. But yeah, I don't know. Jake Riley, a little bit of a surprise to many at the Olympic trials, busting out that second place finish. So going to, you mentioned a 4-year agreement with On. Wanted to ask you about, one, really your Olympic goals. You're going into the Olympics. What are you mindset wise? You know, how are you looking at it? What are your goals going into it? And then that's knowing that is a 4-year agreement. Now coming out of the Olympics, like what are you thinking about post Olympics? How long do you see your career going? Are you putting much thought to that at this point? Or are you really just kind of buckled down in the near term?
So I think of myself and Jared Ward as pretty similar runners. We're the same age. Like we were at Foot Locker together. I think we have pretty similar PRs. We have pretty similar running styles. And, you know, he went to Rio and he got 6th. So that's definitely a number that's in my head. I would like to be, I think top 10 is kind of like that's a good solid goal. I think if I were to hit that, most commentators out of there would be surprised by that. And then, you know, I would be like, yes, that was a very good accomplishment. I don't like going into races thinking like, I want to be top 10. You know, I really feel like you want to set your sights higher, but you know, when there's that many 203, 204 guys in the race, I think it's naive to think like, yes, I'm going to go out in this race, racing as if I'm going to get a medal here. You know, I don't think my path to a really high finish is necessarily going out and trying to compete for a win in the sense of like, I'm going out from the gun to do it. You know, I think if I'm going to get in there, it's going to be because some other people kind of, you know, they spend so much time punching each other that there's no punches left for me. And like I run, you know, not necessarily a conservative race, but certainly like a little bit more of an even paced race with the idea that when people are kind of falling off and they're having trouble struggling at the end of the race, I'm ready to start accelerating, kind of what I did at the trials. So
I was just going to bring that up.
My path to like ultimate success, I think, is a lot narrower than a lot of the other people in this race. I'm not necessarily counting it out. So yeah, I think top 10 is kind of the number I have in mind. I'd love to get that 6. I mean, 5. I have to be one step better than Jared, ideally.
Of course.
So yeah, that's kind of how I've been envisioning things. I mean, right now I'm in just like the dog days of training. So everything hurts and you're always panicking that you'll never not be tired anymore. So like you constantly go through that sort of emotional thing. But, you know, once things start to come around a little bit, I'll be able to get a little more excited about that. Then yeah, the contract goes through to 2024. So I'm definitely in this through the next Olympic cycle. Then it's going to be reevaluate things. You know, there's no guarantees. We know that people that make the Olympic team one time around, you can get hurt or you can just, you know, have other people show up, be better that day. So if I were to not make the team in 2024, I think that'd be a pretty big conversation to be had. I'll be 35. Yeah, 35 around that time, which is still prime marathoning years. We're pretty close to it. So I think I'm not taking off the table that I could do a few more years after that. In the interim, I definitely want to try and make a world cross team. That's kind of, but the like 1A was making the Olympics, and then world cross is 1B. With cross country has always been my first love. So I'd really like to go for that team in 2022. Try and make some world championships teams. You know, world championships are in Oregon this time around. So to be able to run world champs in my home country would be absolutely fantastic. Now, those two things are a little bit at odds at each other. That's like, we might have to make some priority shifts in there. And then after that, it's like run as many marathons as well as I can.
We've certainly seen in the past, I don't know, say 10 years of athletes really doing well in their later years compared to previous. Abdi is a perfect example of that. Someone who just continues to grind on. I mean, Legat was another good example. I think more and more we're seeing longevity of careers into your late 30s, even 40s. So it's awesome to hear that you're thinking about it that way. And, it's not even just saying 2024, but also like, is there an opportunity beyond that? When you're 39 and it's 2028, there still is potential that you're even PRing at that age, which is awesome. That's awesome to hear.
Sarah Hall is apparently running better than she ever has. So, it's
insane.
That's certainly an example to keep in mind.
Exactly.
It's the Stanford path.
Exactly. And it's insane because it's not just the marathon for her. She's crushing the 10K on the track too. She's got the whole range, and it's, you wouldn't even expect to see that. Yeah. So your fitness now, looking back, I guess part one of the question is, I'm curious how your perspective is on the Olympics getting pushed out a year. Do you think that you're going to be better equipped and more prepared for the Olympics, knowing that you had that year and a half to prepare for it? Or, I mean, I guess you probably aren't going to say that, I would have been better off if I only had the 6 months, because that obviously didn't happen. But or do you really see it as you're kind of indifferent, one way or the other? But also then, how do you feel like your fitness is coming along right now as compared to, say, December, January, leading into those Olympic trials, early 2020?
Yeah, I ended up dealing with some. It wasn't like full-on injuries, but certainly some kind of nagging pains. After the Olympics, I was dealing with like this kind of chronic hamstring, and it just took us a really long time to figure it out. Now, that wouldn't have stopped me from getting to the start line. It would have been, at the end of the day, like at the very least, just jam some cortisone in there, and I'll be able to go out and race. That was never going to be the issue. But, it's hard to train at full capacity when you've got this like little kind of nagging thing in the background. So the extra time certainly gave me an opportunity to take care of that. And in the process of trying to figure out what was causing it and what it was, dug into some of the imbalances that I think probably generated from when I was dealing with my other side, my right side, with the Achilles problem. So I think I've addressed some underlying structural issues and some strength imbalances that I didn't really know were there before, or I didn't think were showing up. So I think my stride's gotten better. We tried to get a little bit of speed work in, but then I had to deal with that hamstring thing. So I don't know how much that really added to it. As far as where I am in this buildup, it's always a little bit hard to tell because everyone, I thought we were going to kind of keep a little bit closer to the previous schedule so I'd be able to compare workout to workout. But I do remember being about 2 months out. I was at home in Bellingham training, and it was not feeling good. Like every tempo was feeling like pretty crappy. And that still happens to a certain extent, but it's better than it was before. So I think in terms of where I am relative to previous buildups, I think I'm a little bit ahead of where I was. And that's kind of Lee's whole philosophy is, we're going to try and do the exact same thing. We're going to do it a little bit better. So, I'm not blowing previous workouts out of the water, and I don't know that would even be the best thing to be doing. One of the nice things about having a coach with as much experience, especially Olympic experience as Lee has, is he made plenty of these mistakes when he was doing his own buildups. So he kind of knows some of the pitfalls to steer me away from. So we're not trying to overreach here. We're not radically trying to reinvent the wheel and do something totally different. It's just trying to make, from last segment, what can we learn and what are some small improvements that we can do? Let's try and, maybe shoot for just a little bit faster on this particular key workout without trying to radically overhaul everything that we did before. So I think we're sticking to that plan pretty well. I do feel like I'm just a little bit more fit, starting out at a little bit higher level than I was beforehand. So hopefully we'll see that reflected when we get to race day. Now at the same time, trials was 45 degrees and breezy and hilly, and Sapporo is flat and it's going to be fast and it's going to be hot. So, if I were to run the same time in Sapporo, would that be a better thing or worse thing? Who the heck knows? I don't really know how we're going to compare those performances, but hopefully in terms of overall fitness will be a little bit better than I was going into the trials.
Yeah, knowing that the race is likely to be hot, I think, at least my perspective, my take is that it might be better suited for you, knowing that you're going in with that mentality of you kind of are that smart racer. Like you compared yourself to Jared Ward. What you see in a lot of races is, everyone, like people will go at the pace, and then if it is that hot and people are laboring, a lot of people will probably drop out if the weather is like that. So if you're just eating people up on the back half of that race, like running your own race, say it plays out like that, who knows, maybe it'll go out slow and everyone's in the pack, hard to know. But if you do have a breakaway early on and a lot of people go with it, they just can't handle it, they drop out. I mean, that might play really well into your racing style. It's so hard to gauge and so hard to know, but being patient in a hot race is typically the best approach for sure, versus just going balls to the wall from the get-go and hoping that you aren't affected as much by the heat as inevitably you're going to be just biologically.
Unless you're 1-0 and then you can do whatever you want.
Yeah.
You can go on 203 pace and freaking 100 degrees.
R.I.P. man. Yeah, that's true. He was one that everyone would have loved to have seen what he could have done if he would have, been around for another 5 to 10 years. Because, there aren't many people that can do what he was able to do. We'll put it that way.
Yeah. I think adverse conditions are certainly an opportunity if you can be one of the ones that doesn't let it affect you. Like I remember being at the trials and a lot of people were concerned about, well, first of all, they're concerned how cold it was going to be, and it was like 45, and I was like, "This is goddamn fantastic!
That's perfect.
Like, this is perfect." But also like the hills were concerning, and I think in any major race, especially a championship race, and then you add on top of that not just championship, but like the championship race, there's going to be 20% of the people that kind of like they show up to that start line and they're already pretty much done because the moment has gotten on top of them. Another advantage I think I have to a certain extent is like no one's going there to race me. Right, they're going there to race like Mo or Kipchoge or Galen. Like, if their race strategies are accounting for people, it's not going to be for me. And at a certain point, it's like two people throwing a punch at each other and they knock themselves out, and like number 3 can kind of like jog in there. Like, if they're throwing haymakers and I don't have to be the one getting hit by those things, like, some people could punch themselves out before the end, and if I can be sort of smart and contained and controlled, and then ready to roll over the end, which is like the whole key part to that entire strategy. Like I said, my path to really high level success is a lot narrower than anybody. Like Kipchoge has got 20 different ways that he can beat you because he's the fastest ever and he's also one of the strongest ever, and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera.
Mm-hmm.
Like I don't have his wheels, I don't have his endurance. Like I kind of need to sneak in there a little bit. So, I take that conservative approach. I need the race to come back to me a little bit. And so if that doesn't happen, then my conservative approach was probably not going to be that successful. But at the same time, going out and trying to like drop 430s to run the legs out of Kipchoge, like that's not going to be that successful either. And I'm probably not going to be there at the end to take advantage of it anyway. So I think this is my best strategy. I don't think anybody's like surprised by that strategy. I think a lot of people are going to go in with that same mentality. And then it's about managing the little things so that when you go in, you're ready to execute it. And I do think that's one of the advantages to Lee's training and to the kind of stuff that we do. I think he prepares us really well for championship racing, for racing that involve lots of pace changes. We also, if you look at what we do to compare other groups out there, at least in the US, we err on the side of less versus more, like a little bit less mileage, especially in terms of like the high intensity workouts. We pulled back on that a little bit. So, our goal is to come in a little bit undercooked rather than overcooked. Mm-hmm. And I think when you're talking about being conservative and having something left to push at the end, undercooked prepares you for that style of racing a little bit better. Sure. We don't come all the way up to the razor's edge, which means maybe I won't ever go into a race at like the absolute pinnacle of the fitness that I could hit. But, that's really hard to control. And I think you see the people that try to ride that line real close. They'll have a good one, but they'll also have a couple bad ones in there. And there are going to be plenty of people out there having a bad race. So if you're out there ready to have a good one, even if it's not the best one you ever had, so long as you have it on that day, that's what's important in championship racing. And that's kind of how we're approaching things.